Yeah, I think so too. I actually kind of worry that it might just be something like the time zone difference. Although I know she knows there is one. It's so easy these days, though, for people to get mixed up about what time it is. I'm hoping that, I mean, that's, she'll feel terrible about it, but I hope it's just that and not something more serious. I'm trying, is it okay if I say a thing, speak to you, Wusab?
Yep.
I was wondering, I think maybe we might have to quickly, as librarians often do, come up with an alternative plan. And I'm just wondering if we could call on our own faculty to help with this conversation. And I know most all the faculty are here. It's a rare and wonderful opportunity for us all to be together in the same room. So I think we should make the most of it if we possibly can.
I agree, and so this is a great opportunity to discuss our kind of immediate needs. The students have questions. I mean, the kind of challenges, and so do the instructors, faculty members, and the administrator like myself. So if you have questions, why don't you start to speak up? Okay, Kathleen has what I have.
Kathleen Caprese, yes. So I see Kathleen's question, and Kathleen sent a good question. So Kathleen says, I have a question. What can we do to practice to invite diversity into the profession? That's a good question.
I think Dr. Varadel is ready.
I think she is too.
I had an idea, something to share. So one area where I really think we need to focus on is recruitment. So usually it's a two-pronged thing, recruitment and retention. And so one thought that I've had for a while is looking at people who serve, especially as library assistants. Like, let's say you've got a job at your university as a student worker in a library. A lot of people I know who end up going to library school, that's how they got plugged into libraries. They never thought they'd ever be a librarian. They just happened to get an after-school job in a library, and it seemed to roll one thing onto another, and then they ended up being a librarian. And I think there are a lot of people from underrepresented populations who are in those roles, but who may not realize that that is a career path, or may not have the mentors in place to do that. So I'm hopeful that we do a better job of reaching out to people who serve as library assistants, or who have like I said, those work study kind of jobs, to encourage them to think about librarianship as a potential profession. I really think that's really key. I think the data shows that we are doing a better job with recruitment. We need to do a better job with retention too, once people are in the profession, making sure everyone feels welcome. But I really feel like that's key, that we have a profession that represents our diverse population, that they feel included and valued. So that's something I'm very passionate about, and I think will be a key in making sure that we as a profession represent the people that we're serving as well.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Vardell. And who else? Doesn't anyone else in the audience, faculty or student, have something to say about that good topic?
I'll just echo what Dr. Vardell was saying, but part of it, I think, is a general problem where we as librarians have historically been very bad at telling people what librarians really do. Mm-hmm. We've been very bad at telling people what a library really is and the value a library brings to its community. And so it's not surprising that it's not sort of the number one choice for people of diverse backgrounds or other backgrounds to become a librarian. And I think, Dr. Vardell, when you're saying a lot of people only sort of come into the profession after they've experienced it because they were sort of totally unaware. We as librarians don't like to think everybody is completely unaware of who we are and what we do. But if you think about it, if you ask the average person in the street, what does a librarian do? They're either going to say librarians sit around and read books all day, or we stamp the date into books. And even although we haven't done that in 20 years, that is still the impression of what people do. So I think it's really important that we are telling people, and that also means children, it also means being involved in schools, particularly at a time when more and more school libraries are being deprofessionalized and are being run, if you're lucky, by one professional librarian in the central office. So children are not going to schools where they are experiencing professional librarianship. We are then seeing them coming into college and university, never having experienced a professional librarian. And so they don't know what an academic library is. And that's something that I think academic libraries are only just really coming to terms with, that so many of the people that walk through the door really have no understanding of what a library is, what a librarian does, and the value of the library to their community. So I think that's an essential part. And it's also a part that you can start dealing with right now, simply by telling people what you do as a librarian.
Well, myself as an immigrant, other cultures, other countries, you don't know how low they perceive the librarian's positions. So in many countries, many cultures, librarians just kind of job you avoid as much as possible. It's very clerical things. So again, back to Dr. Vardell's, Dr. Smith's comments, we have to kind of show, I mean, in the US, it's kind of, the top level of PR, but still we need to go out and then it kind of, actively promote the functions and the library services and then librarians. That's a good thing. And I think, I'm not sure who is LK, but LK had a question about implicit bias. So I also have a question, how do we combat implicit bias in ourselves and others? Can we combat it in others? Because that's something you often don't know you have.
Yeah, I dropped a helpful link in the chat. It's a resource of implicit bias tests that you can take. So I'd recommend when you have some time checking it out. Hi, Lydia. I'd recommend checking those out. You may have heard of those, then you're in my class, Lydia. You may have heard me talk about those tests, but those are helpful just to kind of things you might not necessarily assume, like there are tests about bias you might have about religion or bias you might have about people's sizes, things like that, that are just interesting to kind of open your eyes. But I think talking about it is the most important thing. And when it comes to combating or addressing it when you recognize it in someone else, that's definitely some area where I've spent a lot of time thinking about this summer in response to the Black Lives Matter movement and protests, and what me as a white person can do that's not taking it over for me, or somehow, the white-splaining, mansplaining what it should be like to be in someone else's shoes. And what I've heard, what I've learned, what I've grown to think about is this: when you see something, say something. So a lot of people don't recognize when they're showing their own biases or their own prejudices. And so just simply saying, you know, maybe you want to say that a little bit differently, or what did you mean when you said that? And not necessarily, I'm the least, I hate conflict. So I'm a very conflict avoidant person, but I think if you can just ask someone like, what did you mean when you said that? Just kind of opening the conversation, I think is the most productive way to do it. Because I think if we say that was racist, that may be true, and maybe that is necessary in some situations, but it's probably not the best way to start a conversation. So just asking someone to explain a little bit more is the kind of, when you see something, say something comment. Oh, Stan, I see your mouth moving, but we can't hear you.
We'll wait for you if you can hear us. No? No, we can't hear you. I'm so sorry, Stan. Keep trying though.
I don't know if everyone knows Dr. Stan Trembach. He's a first-year professor with us, so if you haven't had a chance to meet him, there he is. Hopefully we'll hear
and
from
Dr.
him.
Bardell, thank you so much for introducing him. I was just thinking the same thing, that there might be people in our group who hadn't met him yet.
So there was a question about the future of our profession. Somebody said, some people say it's a dying profession. So what do you think?
Well, I was laughing. I was reading the comments and someone was saying people have been saying that for 30 years. I think people have been saying that for a whole lot longer than 30 years, and we're still here. I think it comes back to what I said before. What do people think a library is? And again, very often people will answer that it's a building with books in it. Now, there's nothing wrong with that answer on one level, but on another level, it completely misses the point. It's not about books. It's about the content of books. And libraries are places to bring people and information together. That's what we're doing. And it doesn't matter whether it's a book, it doesn't matter whether it's online, it doesn't matter if it's a video or an audio stream or a podcast. We're bringing people and information together. Books are not dead. If the archivists are here, they will tell you the best form of preservation for information that we know of at the moment is to print something out on acid-free paper, and as long as you've got a reasonable storage facility, you're good for 500 to 1,000 years. Our digital storage is not anything like that stable or secure. And so books are not going away. Print is not going away. I know we keep hearing this, but the data would not support that these days. Do we love online information? Yes, of course we do. It's great, it's wonderful. Is everything available on Google? No, of course it isn't. The last time I checked, which I will admit is a couple of years ago, because of the structure of the web and the structure of Google, Google is at best indexing something like 10 to 15% of what is freely available on the web. 10 to 15%, which means 85 to 90% of what is freely available on the web is not going to come to you through Google. So how are you going to find that? Because that's the majority, the vast majority of information on the internet is not coming through Google. And Dr. Vardell will remind me, because I just completely forgot the name of the book that the Faculty Book Club are reading now, but it's the
Algorithms of Oppression.
Thank you, thank you. And I was very struck with one part of the introduction of that that said, Google is really an advertising company. The purpose of Google is to sell advertising. The purpose of Google is not to provide you with information, accurate or otherwise. And that it's just looking at this a different way. It's not wrong that Google is that. They're perfectly entitled to be that. But I think how they've tried to place themselves is that they are the purveyors of information, when in fact, they are the purveyors of a very small amount of information ranked by monetary benefit to Google. That is not what a library does. We're not interested in ranking information based on the monetary gain to the library or the monetary gain to us personally. We're interested in getting you answers to your questions or getting you into information that will help you meet your needs, learn new things, develop your skills. So I don't think we're going away as long as we tell people that that's what we're doing and we're not just checking out books.
I think all of this is related to the good question also that Christy Webb added to the conversation a few minutes ago, saying, how can we build awareness of the function? And I think we have been talking about the function and also the value. And really, I think Dr. Smith just hit on that quite a bit. Does anybody have anything to add related to function and value? Building awareness of that?
One of the things I love about the librarianship profession is we're all about being lifelong learners and cultivating lifelong learning. And so I think it's important to make sure we're staying relevant. And as a profession, I think we do a fairly good job of that, but we can always do better. And so if you look at the trends, I don't think the number of library positions are going down. We continue to have positions opening, but they're not what we might have normally thought of when we think about a librarian. Especially in my background of medical librarianship, people are like a full-time systematic review librarian, and that's all they do. And it looks so different than what you might think of it when you think of librarian. So I think we need to be open and say, when we are showing our value, what do our patrons want? What do our customers want? Where's the demand? And make sure we're moving with that as is appropriate. We don't want to be persuaded by monetary means, like Andrew was saying, but just in terms of making sure that we're following the pulse. And I think, like I said, as a general rule, I think we do a good job of that, but it's always important to keep that in mind. I think that's a key element, as well as infusing marketing in library science education. We have a marketing elective that we have at SLIM that we offer, I think every 2 years or so. I try to talk about marketing here and there in my classes. So trying to think about ways to, again, build awareness is another thought I had.
April Pearl made the good comment about how it is that middle and high school students don't think that people go to college to be librarians. And I've been plugging away at trying to encourage us to advocate at the level of young people in middle and high school, helping them to overcome that misperception that they have. And there's so much opportunity there. We must make it a priority. Several other of our faculty are with us, and I just hope you'll please jump in anytime. Please don't wait for an invitation from any of us. I have the questions that people sent in ahead of time, and I just wonder, unless there's something I'm missing on the chat. And
I would just also add that we're not the only profession that suffers from a lack of awareness and understanding. People like social workers, a lot of people don't know what social workers do. So I think I think there's a lot to be learned from looking at what other people are doing, collaborating, making relationships, because there's a lot of good work that's going on in our world. And just because you don't see it on TV doesn't mean that it's happening. So I just want to put that out. We're not alone in needing to market ourselves better.
Yeah, I also see David Velasquez, a good comment, sharing about how it is that his father, who's an immigrant, is not supportive of him entering the field and feels it's a waste of time as opposed to pursuing a real job. Boy, so David, are you there where you could speak up, and would you like to?
I'm here. I will say that I'm kind of a non-traditional student. In my 30s, my mid-30s now. Went to college for communications with the intention of getting into journalism, and finding that profession was not what I wanted. And my dad wasn't super supportive of that either. And I ended up getting kind of I worked in a dental lab for a long time, which he didn't really understand, but he knew I made something, so that made him happy. And then when that went away, I ended up working building services. I actually did work in the William Allen White Library at the college for a while, just in building services. And that actually made him really happy because that was a real job to him. But it wasn't, I didn't feel like I was living up to my potential. And that got really frustrating. I was really in a dark place about wanting to do something more and wanting to advocate for myself, but also, wanting to raise up, Hispanic individuals in general, especially under the current administration and a lot of that stuff. I don't want to get into politics, but just some of the things that have been bothering me over the past few years. But feeling like, I made the decision, and my wife's been very supportive, which is great. And I work at a middle school now, and all the teachers I work with have been really supportive. But then I find, like, just, you're right, like people in my own life, my dad, he thinks I'm just wasting time. He says, you're burning money. You should have just stayed in building services because you were making real money and you had a chance to actually do something and that kind of thing. And but even, like I said, my extended family and everything just like, oh man, libraries are still around. You can just get books off the internet, right? And don't you, are you really sure you're just going to waste all that money? And then where are you going to find a job? I mean, there's libraries are closing all over the place. And it has just been a bit disheartening as I've tried to get my feet back under me, having not been in school for quite a while.
We appreciate you sharing that. I see Dr. Smith with his hand up, please.
There are just so many things there, David, that are wonderful. First of all, librarians tend to be very often second, third, fourth, or fifth career people. So I think the oldest student I've ever taught was 75, who was becoming a school librarian, which I thought was wonderful. So non-traditional students are who we are to a large extent. So that's wonderful. People who have been out in the world doing different things coming into the library profession bring a wonderful breadth of knowledge with them, and we absolutely need that. Just when you were saying that your dad doesn't really understand what you're doing, and this ties in with what Dean Jong was saying earlier, but what popped into my mind actually was an interview that I remember several years ago, and it was one of the leading dancers at the Royal Ballet in London, Benazir Hussain, and she was either Indian or Pakistani. And she had come to the end of her dancing career, had been exceptionally successful. And she said, yes, her dad said something to her like, well, he was pleased she was stopping this because now she could get a real job. And I thought, I'm sorry, here's someone who has been one of the top dancers with one of the top companies in the world, and your dad still doesn't get it. He's just pleased that you're, whatever it is, 34, 35, when dancers tend to quit. And now you're going to get a real job, as if everything she had achieved up to that point was nothing. But I think the point is very much that there are some very strong cultural influences here. Very often also cultural influences dealing with whether cultures are written cultures or whether cultures are oral cultures. And cultures that are still very much in an oral frame rather than a written frame do not value the library in the same way because it's not as relevant to them, because what we provide predominantly is written information. If you're not coming from a culture that uses written information in the same way or values it, then obviously you won't value the library in the same way. So I think there were several comments about diversity and understanding our diverse constituents. And I think that's absolutely right. Part of the difficulty is, for us, I'm back to, we assume everybody knows what a library is. There may be people who know what a library is, but it's not perceived as relevant to them individually or to them as a culture, because we're dealing in one type of information that, while we value it, is not valued the same way by everyone. And that's something that I don't think we've really been able to address yet, but we need to, because part of that is understanding what those different cultural values are and how we as librarians can bridge the information gap for people who are coming with a very different viewpoint of the structure of information, preservation of information, and communication. So thanks, David. You brought all that to my mind, which I thought was wonderful. Thank you.
And I just want to put in one more plug for graduate school, that I think it's helpful if you're talking to somebody that's very money oriented, that graduate school is an investment. You can invest your money in lots of different things. I could have invested my money in American Airlines. At one point that would have been smart. Right now, maybe not so much. Instead, I invested my money in me, and now I have a good job that's pretty stable. It's hard to let go of librarians or library professors. I mean, it does happen, but it's hard. It's a fairly stable job. It allows for a little more work-life balance than a lot of other jobs. Professional development, because it's not physically demanding, we can maybe work longer. So I would just encourage, if it resonates at all with you, to think about graduate school as investing in yourself, investing money in yourself that will pay dividends in years to come.
So I'd like to call upon Gina Menger, our wonderful regional director in Oregon, to hear her stories.
Oh, you want to hear my story?
Yes, we do.
So I decided to become a librarian when I was volunteering with an organization here in Oregon called SMART. It's Start Making a Reader Today, and they put adult volunteers into elementary school classes to read with students who are struggling to learn how to read. And at the end of my first year with them, they had a volunteer appreciation party in the school's library. And the librarian there said, this was the best job ever, because the kids come into the library and they're all excited about the books. And I thought that would be the best job ever. And so after a couple of years, I finished my undergraduate degree, because I was on the 30-year plan for that, because I went to three different universities. I had 4 different undergraduate degrees. And when I decided to go to grad school is when I finally said, I got to finish my undergrad. So I went to Portland State University here in Portland. I went part-time for about 4 years and got my undergrad finally in applied linguistics, which I think is very relevant to librarianship in the context of children's services, which is what I decided to focus on. And so I went straight from my undergrad program 8 weeks later into the SLIM program here in Portland. And then 2 years later, I finished and got my master's degree. And I was working at the local electricity company, and they hired me into a position there as the knowledge manager for the IT department, which has a lot of similarities, I find, to working with children. So, and I also volunteered at one of our local library branches here in Portland the whole time that I was in the program, and continued volunteering for my professional organizations. When I graduated, the job market was a little tight, not as tight as it's probably going to be in the future, but it was still pretty tight. There weren't a lot of full-time jobs, and I couldn't live on a part-time job, so I stayed with the electric company in this knowledge manager job, because that did use the skills that I gained through collection development and organization of information and all of those classes that I took. But yeah, I was like 51 when I finished my graduate degree. And through the process of completing that, I also realized that one of the things that keeps me motivated is the lifelong learning part of it. And so when our previous director, Perry, was retiring and she asked me if I would be interested in this position, I thought about it and I'm like, I think I would, because I like academia and I like helping students succeed. And it gives me the opportunity to learn as much as the students are learning. So that's my story of what I found of value out of this program.
Thank you very much. And
Welcome.
we have actually the newest regional director in Las Vegas. Where is Brandi Robin? Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. My name is Brandi Robin, and I'm the new director of Las Vegas. Let's see if my, oh, okay. It says it won't let me turn on my video, but that's okay. Yes, so I am a SLIM alumni, and I did the program in Denver, and I also took classes in Kansas City in order to graduate in the 2 years. And then for the last 9 years, I've been a high school librarian. And so while I was doing my undergraduate, I worked at the Topeka and Shawnee County Public Library, and that's where I found my love for libraries. So.
Thank you, Brandi. Lyra, you're muted.
Yeah, we have another question from her, and I wish that I understand that Dr. Woolls is going to be joining us. She told me that she has had technical difficulties with her, with something in her system, and she said she was going to be joining though. So, but I don't think she's here yet. The question that Brandi asked would be a good one for her, but maybe some of us can also answer it. And it's how do I convince the fifth largest school district in the nation, which is Clark County School District, and I'm guessing that's in Nevada, right?
Las Vegas.
Yep, in Las Vegas.
To reconsider doing away with school librarians. Well, that's a question I would love to answer. First of all, it's great to meet you, and thank you so much for joining us here at SLIM. We're looking forward to working with you. And we hope you keep your advocacy for school libraries alive and well. I believe that it's a very bad decision, and one of the first things I would try to persuade administrators of is that all across all of the content areas today, there's a solid string of learning objectives that are all about information literacy. And it's school librarians, people who graduate from programs such as ours, that have the expertise to teach those skills. And so while content teachers have lots of good expertise of in their own content. The answer to that today is to employ professional librarians who can fill that need. So maybe that was kind of a long-winded answer, Brandi, but I'm hoping others can relate to that. And I think we have some other school librarians with us. I saw someone post, I think it was Tina from Southeast Kansas.
Yeah, that's me.
Please feel free to speak up. You had a good comment.
Well, I've really been working this year on trying to increase some multicultural or diverse resources and books and things in my library, because we really don't have a lot of that, which is surprising because we've got a pretty high Hispanic population here, you know. And so one of my goals this year is to create some sort of a multicultural center within my books and resources for fellow kids, and just a diverse range of different books and literature, and you know, playing on that information literacy and trying to help our teachers to kind of be able to help our our diverse students because of that population. So it's just something that I really got to thinking about, I guess, over the summer when I took a couple of classes and realized that we just don't really try to promote for those kids or make it a space that they want to come in and get some things. And I want to do that, and I want it to be a more welcoming environment for them to come in and get used to coming into the library and getting the information and the resources that they need and that they want. And so I'm really trying to figure out how to do that.
Well, good for you. Long past due. I hope you stay with it. It's so important. Can we still hear each other? Sounds like things went very quiet.
I think we're still here.
Yeah, I'm just reading the chat. It's got so many comments here, so.
I see another question that would it be all right, Wusab, if I share another one that I think is really relevant to all of our students? Elizabeth Hoffman. All right, Elizabeth, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, you remember your good question about how would we recommend students network with each other during this pandemic?
Yeah, it's something that we've had a lot of people looking for ways to get together in our cohort here in South Dakota. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm the cohort director in South Dakota. And our students have been trying to hold online events and get to know professionals in the field, but it's been a struggle with the pandemic. So I'd love to hear anybody's ideas.
Well, at least I'm trying to get this big project done as soon as possible. It will take some time, but I'm trying to get the students, current students, connected with the alumni who are working in libraries and other institutions, so that you can get a network and then a mentorship, mentoring process. But the mentoring pair, we needed to be a little bit careful in matching. So I have been working with the regional directors to develop that kind of network. So I mean, stay tuned. We will have that kind of connection, and then even just informally, kind of have this kind of the interaction via Zoom, inviting our alumni and then the students, not in a kind of classroom setting. So of course they come to us in classrooms, but at more kind of informal way, we may we may accomplish that kind of goal on this virtual environment. And honestly, I had the cohort wrap the meeting this past Monday, and I even suggested there was the kind of question or kind of suggestion from, I believe, one of the Overland Park cohorts, and they really want to see each other in person. So I kind of allowed them to, find out the location, like a park and outside, not a kind of crowded bar. Find the place to have enough, social distancing. But I understand they really want to see each other very soon. So be creative, and then we will support that kind of activities. For example, on campus, there is an honors college So they must have some kind of activities along with their curriculum. So they decided to go out to a Peter Pan park in town. And then they gather about 40 students. And then students' reaction was very positive, saying this is very close to real college experience. So that's their kind of response. So I fully understand you need to meet in person. So be patient, and then we will do our best to facilitate online the networking. But if you have suggestions, feel free to contact me or your regional directors.
I also would just add that I think that I've found that librarians are some very generous people, and I've never known someone who is a practicing librarian who didn't want to be connected to students and to help students through their educational process in any way that they could help. And so while it would be nice for someone to reach out to you, I think I highly encourage you to reach out to someone, even if you don't really know them all that well. It would be a great thing to have someone that you can connect with personally. And we're going to have a program, where the dean just described it. It sounds wonderful. But even until then, right now, I know people can be really kind of lonely and can use some special attention. And that's what I would really recommend. In my 801 class this semester, I've had students to do some interviews with practicing librarians. And it seemed like to me that those were really good conversations, and I'm hoping that people have seen them as ways to stay in touch with practicing librarians. So Elizabeth, how are we doing with your question?
I think those are some really great answers, and I've been reading through the chat, and there's a lot of discussion going on there too. It looks like the Oregon cohort is using Discord to stay connected, which I love Discord. It's kind of a neat platform to use for that. So, and some of the other cohorts are using Facebook to stay connected. There's a suggestion about having regular virtual events, maybe some sort of events that we can plan based around topics that are interesting to students. And Candace has commented how much she's enjoying the open discussion today, and that this has really been a good way to connect with everyone. So that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah. Dale Minobi, Dr. Minobi, are you there today now? Yeah, there he is. Hi. You shared a really good question. Do you remember what your question was, or would you like for me to say it out loud?
Well, you regarding the soft skills? Is that the question?
Yes, that was the one. How important do we think they are? Right?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
But before that, I did have one question though. It was Dean John mentioned that our students can meet at parks. So I assume meeting at parks with social distancing and masks, or how?
Yeah,
what are the specifics of
following
that?
the local, the conditions, the requirements.
Okay. Oh, okay. And so, in other words, we could have that, because the Salt Lake cohort wanted to meet, but I thought maybe it's not safe, and it couldn't be a slim sponsored event. But but
again, it's an agreement between the regional director and then the students, and then if you agree, I mean,
okay.
you know the situation locally most. I'm not seeing the Salt Lake City from Emporia, so I think
okay. So it can be an official Emporia Slim event at a park.
Yeah, if you agree, you're students, and then it's not kind of mandatory participation. No, it's informal thing.
Okay, well, Mariah, I know you folks wanted to do something, so that maybe that's something we can do.
Yep.
Okay, great. And okay, my soft skills, especially these, I was just thinking, you know, these times with the challenges libraries are facing, or for instance, I was talking to Ethan Pickham, who was in the Oregon cohort, and then he moved to Bakersfield, California, and he's now part of the Nevada cohort. But he was saying that they had a patron, he's the director at the library at Bakersfield, even though you have to make an appointment to go in the library and there's curbside pickup, they had a patron run in and was apparently yelling at the staff saying, "It's a hoax. All this COVID is a hoax." So they had to deal with that. So my question was for Dr. Woolls was, how important do you think that is now for librarians to be ready for such situations, those emergencies, where there might be a flare-up of emotions? And you've probably heard about, you know, different places where people have been, you know, yelled at and kicked, or whether, I'm not so much kicked, but I've heard punched or even shot at for emphasizing that they need to wear masks. And I was just wondering what her thoughts were on the importance of soft skills. What, so for instance, what a counselor, a crisis counselor would use, but just basic skills for librarians to use. Yeah. So one of them I do know is that,
yeah, that's a good question.
yeah, and one of them I do know is important. If you have a patron who's starting to yell and loud, it's always good to kind of hear yourself to be calm and say, "Oh, I can't talk anymore until, you know, until the sound level comes down. Then I'm happy to talk with you." You know, just kind of de-accelerate the whole situation and you know, acknowledge. And I've heard Disney has this. They go acknowledge a situation, you know, and thank them for bringing up some issue. But there's different steps to de-accelerate. But I was wondering what Dr. Woolls would say, her suggestion.
Yeah, I'm sorry she's not here to speak to that. What about Dr. Bushman? Are you here, Dr. Bushman? Maybe she isn't. I'm sorry that she isn't, because I think she likes this topic too. Anyone else of the faculty like to join in? Or anyone of the group? I do think that it is truly a time, and it's likely to be, as we even, you know, the pandemic will come to an end. And when it does, we'll be in many ways in a new era of many things. At least that's what a lot of us are thinking, given what we can see now. And there are a lot of people with a lot of emotions. And I think that all of our attributes, all of our training around the idea of service to other people will hopefully serve us well in that capacity to meet the needs of people who have you know, gone through an awful lot. They have experienced all kinds of sacrifices, many people without work, many people with very low paying or no paying, no income. And yeah. I think it's really important for us to be very cognizant of the fact that there is a very large number of people who are likely to be really struggling. And we need to be very ready to be sensitive, I think, Emily.
Yeah, I was just going to add that this is reminding me of Ryan Dowd's book, The Librarian's Guide to Homelessness, and many of you may be familiar with that. He came to the Kansas Library Association conference last fall, and I sat in on a short presentation he did, but he talked about how trauma changes your brain and changes your brain chemistry. And so when you're dealing with these kind of situations where soft skills are at play, if you're dealing with someone who's experienced severe trauma, they're going to respond differently than someone who is not. And I think a lot of us are experiencing trauma to different levels with everything that's going on. And so I think a lot of the tools that he has, a lot of the discussion he has is going to continue to be relevant, not just with working with people with experiencing homelessness, but also people with mental health concerns, people who've lost their jobs, you know, the list goes on. But he has both a book and also online training modules. I don't work for him, so I don't get any cut, but I just thought I would share that if that's something that you're interested in. Check out the book and maybe see. I think that he will set up a library with like one user with they can look at the training and see if it works for the library, and then they can license it for the whole library. So something to look into.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, excuse me, the other thing to remember is in this time, it's not just the person running into the library that may have experienced trauma. The people in the library itself, the library staff, have been
Yeah.
dealing with trauma for 6 months. And we need to acknowledge that we are suffering the effects of cumulative stress. And we are still trying to be open. We're still trying to be accepting. We're still trying to help people as best we can. But the longer these changes go on, the more they affect on each one of us. And so it's not just, I think, because I was also in the meeting that Dr. Vardell was referring to, and at that point, the emphasis really was on the one person coming into the library who may have experienced trauma and then how to deal with that. But it's actually a slightly different situation where everybody in the library building is traumatized to some extent. And so it's very difficult for us. We're all on shorter fuses. We're all slightly disoriented. And it's not because we're mean or wicked, it's just how we are wired to deal with things. And dealing with this much separation, isolation, uncertainty takes its toll. And so we have to be careful that we're trying to take care of ourselves as well as taking care of other people. And usually I think that the number one lesson for dealing with any of these conflict situations is remove yourself from the conflict. Don't move into it. Pull yourself back from it. If you're having the worst day of your existence up to now, you do not need to be the person helping that library patron who's having difficulty. Somebody else can step up and do that. Mm-hmm. But remembering that we're all fragile at the moment, and anything we do, we all have to be very careful and think twice before we open our mouths or type up that email, because life is hard obviously life is hard in many different ways for different people, but everybody is affected by this current pandemic to some extent. And we just need to acknowledge that and understand that we may have difficulty, even if we, quote, know what the right thing is to do, we might not be in a good place to do it.
Yeah, so true. It's affecting everyone, and yeah, good, very good statement.
It's always good for us to talk about soft skills. It's the priority. Yeah.
Something very quick. This is very quick. If a patron comes to you or anyone, acknowledge their thoughts and feelings. No one likes to be told you shouldn't think like that. That's crazy. Just acknowledge what they're saying to you. And I think that should help. Anyway, I'm done.
A very good thought. Thank you for adding that.
Okay, so for the kind of sake of your time, I'm cognizant on your time, the valuable time. I believe we did a great job ourselves by ourselves. So for the students, I will honor my commitment, okay, for the scholarship. So based on our discussion today, so you write up something and then submit to your regional director. We will select, the faculty will select the winner of your essay, okay? So I will honor that the scholarship commitment, okay? So, and then this, I believe this is being recorded. So the other students will be able to watch after the fact. So thank you very much. And I believe the Slim Tech might just archive the chat text as well for the students' information. And
Yes.
I really appreciate the faculties and regional directors' inputs, and then student questions, comments. Thank you so much. Myra, you have?
Yes, there are lots of good comments in the chat, and I just appreciate that they're being archived, and we thank everybody certainly for sharing them. And I want you to know that we're seeing them, even though we might not have mentioned every one of them. And we do really, we look forward to participating with you today. And I think that despite some technical difficulties, we did pull it off well, Dean Jung. So thank you so much for that. A much needed conversation.
Andrew, you have a comment?
I was just going to ask if we could reschedule Dr. Woolls.
Yeah,
She's
I mean,
a wonderful.
we will talk.
Right. She's a wonderful speaker, and I really would like the students to have the opportunity to hear her. And she has been particularly associated in her career with school libraries. So school librarians, I know you were wanting to hear her today. So yes, I would put in a vote to reschedule Dr. Woolls when we can.
Yeah. This is a very understanding audience, and I'm going to be sure to tell her that. So we'll hope to have her again.
Okay, so thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening. Bye.
Bye, all. Thank you.